15th of second seed. I've been thinking about nature recently. I've never felt so familiar with it. These last few weeks, hearing the rain trickle down in the aspens, wind whistling through pine needles, I wonder how I ever stayed sane cooped up in that bungalow in Dragonbridge. Though the dreams persist, at least I have the sounds of the woods to calm me come morning. I had hoped leaving civilized life behind would rid me of these nightmares altogether, but they haunt me still. I suppose I've asked enough of the gods. Seems I'll have to make this right on my own. I think it best if I stay away from other folk after my incident at Old Rolden. Maybe I'll buy some land. I remember what that mill worker said about Falkreath. It sounds peaceful and empty.
Silas sat back, staring into the pages of his journal, waiting for the ink to dry so he could close the cover. He had to have patience. He was learning that. Recently it seemed like every little thing would bother him. He'd have dreams, horrible dreams, of permanently silencing the incessant noise of his neighbors. Silas thought it was the town, that leaving Dragonbridge behind would end these visceral nightmares. But that poor barmaid at Old Heraldon Inn. It took a fellow patron holding him back for Silas to realize the extent of his rage. He hadn't even noticed the tears rolling down her cheeks. If he wants to live a normal life again, Silas will have to rebuild, far from civilized life. Can the Skyrim wilds offer all he needs for survival? And, more importantly, can you make a living in Falkreath? So, the rules. No stealing, no leaving, no killing innocents. Killing bandits and animals are both fine. Additionally, we won't be staying at the inn during this run because of Silas's outburst at Old Heraldon. Our main source of income will be from selling firewood and craftables. The goal for this run is to build a home and include every crafting station in the base game. For that, we'll be using the mod Woodcutter Revised, which makes any tree in Skyrim destructible. Once the tree is felled, we can use the logs to craft furniture at the mod's new crafting stations. As for the house itself, we'll build that using the Hearthfire DLC. Now let's get started. Welcome to Silas's campsite. Since I'm not staying at the inn, this is where I'll sleep, cook, and craft for now. I'm starting out with a little bit of gear like a bow and a woodcutter's axe, since Silas has been camping a few weeks at this point. I managed to kill a wolf and, at a nearby campsite, use the pelt to make some leather. I can also make a sawhorse, a new workbench from Woodcutter Revised, at the tanning rack, but to make it, I'll need to cut down my very first tree. I made it to Falkreath village and modified the woodcutter's axe so I can start cutting. I'll probably mute a lot of the tree chopping clips because it's a lot of... But after the tree was downed and debranched, I got a log and several branches to craft a sawhorse. I chopped the second tree, but with only 2 small logs and some branches, I'm already over encumbered. I have a little bit of starting gold and those logs to sell, so after crafting a sawhorse, I went and bought a backpack.
Well met. Unlike my brother, I've no dislike of strangers.
Since I'm playing on survival, there's a lot of walking back and forth between camp and town, so on the way back I decided to deal with those highwaymen blocking the road. Hopefully traders will have an easier time getting to Falkreath now. Just down the road from the campsite there's a little house, but it seemed to be abandoned. With the front door still locked, Silas didn't want to break in case the owners came back. He did, however, take the food that was outside. It would have been a shame for it to rot out in the sun. I saw a wolf killing a deer, so I waited for it to run off before taking what I could off the dead prey. Missing the shot that many times in a row was for the roleplay, I swear. But once I killed it, I got another pelt to make leather and used the meat to make some stew. Now that I'm back at camp, I can place the sawhorse down and check out all there is to craft. In order to make furniture, I'll need a workbench, and for that, I'll need wooden planks and beams and an iron ingot. Now there are a couple of iron veins near the camp, but there isn't a smelter in town, just the forge. So I'll either have to buy iron ingots or explore to find a smelter somewhere in the hold. I walked back to town to buy a pickaxe so I can at least mine some ore to sell, but realized Silas literally had 1 gold to his name, so I went to the chopping block. You only get the dialogue option to sell firewood to innkeepers if you have it in your inventory, which the game detects by checking for the item ID of firewood when you enter conversation. Unfortunately, Woodcutter Revised changes the ID of firewood, meaning I didn't get the dialogue option anymore. General stores will still buy it, but since I have a low speech skill, they only buy it for 2 to 3 gold.
18th of second seed. The townsfolk have been welcoming, if wary. I overheard the guards say there had been wolf attacks. I suppose that would also explain the lone goat in town. Seems she's the only one of her herd to survive. I've seen the occasional wolf while out logging, though they mostly steer clear when they see the axe. odd that they would feel comfortable attacking the town, but not a man alone in the woods. I'll be sure to shoot a wolf or two if I see them near town. Could always use the extra pelts.
I bought my pickaxe and walked back to camp to sleep, finally leveling up, and put it into stamina for the carry weight. I had 2 level ups, so I put 1 point into archery and the other into one-handed. On day 2, I woke up, ate some food, and went back to that ore vein with my new pickaxe. While I was over there, I fought off a bunch more wolves and collected their pelts. You know what? This looks like a nice little plot of land. Once I buy the land for Lakeview Manor, I'd like to avoid using the mining spots on the property, just to add some difficulty, so I went looking for mining spots around the lake. Luckily, there's a clay deposit right off the road. While I was out exploring, I found that Half Moon Mill has a workbench. I looked through what I could craft and got so excited about having the right resources to make wood storage that I didn't realize it weighed 400 pounds, so I had to leave it behind. Back in Falkreath, I sold my wolf pelts to buy some iron ingots and went back to camp to craft that common workbench. I had to cut down some more trees since I stupidly spent our planks and beams on wood storage, but I made another one for our camp too. Hey, I can start making furniture now, but I still don't have anywhere to put it. So Silas went to visit the Jarl to ask him about buying that land. Understandably, the Jarl was a bit concerned about letting an aloof stranger settle near the town, but Siggeir had heard about Silas taking out those highwaymen on the road and decided to give him a chance to prove himself. The Jarl asked Silas to take out a group of bandits held up in a mine northwest of town. On the way to camp to prepare, I saw these Vigilants of Stendarr who appear to be twins. Nice to see a family profession, I guess. At camp, I took a rest, made some food for the journey, and set off to deal with those bandits for the Jarl. On the road out of town, I met these Vigilants of Stendarr who appear to be twins. Something strange is going on here. My first outing was a disaster. I got rock joint, food poisoning, the shit scared out of me by a necromancer, and then I died. My second attempt went much better. I took a different path to the mines and found quite a bit of ore along the way. Once I reached my destination, I was able to find a vantage point along the side of the mountain and killed a few bandits with sneak attacks before I went in. I like to use iron arrows to draw the enemies out of hiding, then switch to higher damage arrows to actually kill them. There's a smelter here. Between the ore I found on the way here and the orchelium in the mine, I'll be able to smelt a ton of ingots to sell. The bandit chief went down pretty easy. I took a few things from the chest and mined all the ore I could. I smelted all my metals, and with some of the iron, crafted a few more tools to use at the tanning rack. The scissors will let me craft clothing, and the knife lets me make some decorative items like baskets, hanging pelts, and rugs. Silas entered Falkreath from the graveyard and noticed a small ceremony taking place. More than just the ceremony was small. So was the headstone, and the hole dug for the deceased. Silas turned his gaze away from the grim sight and went straight to the Jarl to inform him of the bandit's demise. Siggeir granted Silas permission to purchase the land he had had his eye on, for 5,000 gold. Well, time to get chopping.
21st of second seed. I managed to convince the Jarl to sell me that plot overlooking the lake, but I don't feel much excitement. My mind has been occupied by that man in the jailhouse. After I left the Jarl's longhouse, one of the guards asked to speak to me privately. He led me over to the jailhouse and told me more about those wolf attacks. No wolf, he said, but an abomination. Hircine's beast, werewolves. I didn't believe him. Sure as bones, the man was crazed. See for yourself, he told me. And out of curiosity or stupidity, I did. I don't know about any werewolf nonsense, but that man in the prison wasn't right. He called me blood brother, said he could smell it on me, said I know the beast that stalks the town at night, said I'd know it if I looked in a mirror. He spoke of a hunger, unsated by any meat I could find in the forest. I could feel my mouth water as he said it. I don't know how, but he must know of my nightmares. I think it best if I keep away from him. I'll buy what I need to build myself a shack, but once it's done, I'm never setting foot in this town again.
To earn some money, I started cutting wood at the woodcutting block, but quickly realized that's boring as hell and I don't want to do it. So I sold what I'd chopped and went back to camp to sleep and level up. I put that point into light armor. When I woke up, I cooked all the food I'd found on my mission to the mines and chopped a little more wood before heading back to town. Once I was outside the gate, I figured I might as well cut some of the trees nearby so I wouldn't have to walk so far to sell the wood. I found this huge downed tree and got tons of logs from it. Now, logs aren't worth a lot. The most I could get one to sell for was less than 20 gold, but thankfully I can convert logs into metric shit tons of firewood, which sells for a much better rate. I also used all my leather and those new tanner scissors to make some mythic dawn gloves, which sell for about 25 gold each. Not bad. I went to sell my firewood and gloves, but for some reason Solif wasn't at the store. I had to wait 24 hours in place, becoming exhausted and starving, before he decided to come back. This wouldn't be an issue if I could just sell to the innkeeper. Back at camp, Silas made a couple of pieces of furniture to sell, some simple bar stools to practice his craft. At some point I realized if I just drop all my firewood and carry it in front of me, I wouldn't be over-encumbered all the time. That was honestly a huge relief. The walking speed is so slow. More tree chopping, more firewood crafting, more survival management. I went to the forge to see if I could craft any weapons worth a lot of gold, and found that I could use 2 firewood to make a wooden axe worth over 3 times as much, which also increased my smithing a ton. After selling all those axes, I finally had enough to purchase Lakeview. I spoke to the Jarl's steward, got the deed to my land, and set off to move Silas's belongings. To pick up and move furniture, I'm using the mod Jaxonz Positioner. Items retain their weight when stored in my inventory, so there's no way to abuse the system by carrying full trees in my pocket. Trust me, I tested that before starting the run. Now, because Silas is a red-blooded, Skyrim-born and bred Nord, he don't take no handouts, so I deleted the starter chest and its contents. In its place, I set up a sawhorse and the common workbench as well. While out looking for ore locations, I found the Lady Stone in the center of the lake and realized that health and stamina regen might actually be useful in survival mode. I was mostly looking for corundum so I could craft a lock for the front door, not realizing that there was corundum ore up the hill in front of Lakeview. I realized that later, but for now I just walked back to town to buy an ingot.
29th of 2nd Seed. I can't sleep. The first night in my cabin and still I feel no relief. I don't know what that man did to me, but since I visited the jailhouse, the nightmares are only more vivid. I recall bits and pieces when I wake. The smell of blood, the screams of animals, Falkreath bathed in shadow. I see it through eyes of red, from behind rocks and through a leafy veil. I never approach, but I'm always watching. I lock myself in tonight, barricade the door, not sure whether for the town's protection or my own.
We don't have a lot right now, but I furnished the place as much as I could. Silas has a bed, chest, nightstand, and some lights. What more could a man need, really? Oh, right, every crafting station in the game. I decided to go exploring to find the rarer resources I'd need for some of the crafting stations, and that led me to Knife Point Camp, where I got a bunch of iron and a roll of paper. On the way back, I found the Headless Horseman, which was cool. This is only the second time in all my years of playing Skyrim I've ever seen him, and of course his horse is nowhere to be found. When I got back home, I crafted a smelter and tucked it into the hillside. That's the first crafting station down. I also slept and leveled up again. I put that point into smithing, so better ingots will start spawning in merchants' inventories. I built a garden off the side of the house and started planting some food and taking note of all the ingredients I'd need for our next few crafting stations. I got a few of the cheaper crafting stations out of the way early, like the armor workbench and the grindstone and the leather tannery. I went back to town to buy some glass and bone meal for the alchemy station, but only managed to get the glass. I was going to get bone meal from fighting skeletons, but one of the anniversary edition quests seems to replace about 50% of the skeleton enemies with zombies, so that's going to make the hunt for bone meal a bit more difficult. Back home I took a break from resource gathering to improve my weapons and armor at the new workbenches. Then I crafted a woodcutter's block, forgetting there's one nearby the cabin already. I'll need to get moonstone and malachite for the enchanting station later, so I went back to town to increase my smithing. After a long day of spamming E and left click, I decided to go back to the cabin to craft our cooking station. I chose to craft the fire pit from Hearthfire because the lighting in the cabin doesn't play well with modded light sources. The crafting item I was most worried about was the tundra wood for the enchanter, because it only grows in the reach. But luckily for me, Falkreath butts up against the reach, and I was able to find the right kind of tree right on the edge of the hold, all the while trying not to aggro the Spriggan 10 feet away from me. I met what I think was two different groups of bandits on the road fighting each other, who then both decided they wanted to attack me instead. I thought I could take them all on at first, but I was very wrong, so I ran away and hid. When I got back and checked my supplies, I realized I didn't have the troll skull I needed, so I went looking in town to see if I could find one being used as decor. I did find one inside Grave Concoctions, but since I wasn't friendly with the owner, I would have had to steal. Silas is no stranger to exploration, so I did a little bit of dungeon crawling instead. My first outing didn't go so great. I was pretty much immediately killed by a Spriggan, but I avoided the Spriggan on the second try and wound up at an orc bandit camp. I wiped them out and decided to take all the food I could before heading inside. There were more bandits waiting there, but I took them out stealthily as not to alert the bandit chief, who definitely would have killed me. I picked a lock on this grate so I could access their basement, and I was super lucky to find the troll skull I needed down there. I also stumbled upon this broken razor. Not sure why someone would keep something like that. Just buy a new razor, idiot. I made the long trek home with my troll skull and slept to level up my smithing again. And I finally filled up those garden plots, plus some apple trees. On my list of crafting tables was also the scriptorium from Woodcutter Revised and an alchemy station. I needed ink and a quill for the scriptorium, so I checked the lake for slaughterfish eggs to make the ink, and later had to buy a hagraven feather to make the quill. When I went back to the alchemy shop to look for one, the shopkeeper was selling 15 bone meal, exactly the amount I need for the enchanter. That's crazy. Now, I thought the vendors would start selling malachite once I unlocked the glass smithing perk, but I read online that it actually depends on your character level. Since I'd been checking the seller's inventories daily, I figured the forum was right and went out to try and level my destruction skill. Beyond a Spriggan, which didn't kill me this time, I wasn't able to find much to fight, so I thought, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and went back to making more wooden axes. But then I got bored again and decided to go exploring instead. I found this cave with an ominous blue light pulsing in the center of the room. And mushrooms, nice! I collected all the mushrooms to sell later and ignored the weird shit going on. Silas has nightmares of mysterious origin already, no need for any more of those. After leaving the cave, I started having weird experiences, like goblins and a talking dog. I think I may have breathed in too many mushroom spores. I slept, leveling up, and the next day decided to craft some furniture for the house, so I'll have somewhere to put the alchemy and enchanting stations once I craft them. I then went back in to rearrange the house a bit in preparation. Doesn't that look nice? Silas's home is starting to come together. I sold those mushrooms, bought the hagraven feathers, made myself a quill, and made some more axes. Then I walked home and crafted the scriptorium, placing it on the desk inside. I guess I got bone break fever at some point, so I'll have to deal with that. Even though they weren't on the list, I decided to build the animal pen and apiary, mostly just to make the homestead look a little less empty. I walked back to town to check the blacksmith for malachite again, but actually found a single ingot being sold at the general trader. I may or may not have planted a resource earlier in this run, but this was actually an organic spawn, and I was very excited about it. I immediately rushed back home and made the enchanter, placing it on the desk next to my scriptorium. I headed back to town after that, stopping into the Hall of the Dead to get rid of my ailment, and I realized I only had a few more things to buy to craft the alchemy station, but I wanted to see if I could find them in the world first. So I went exploring, got killed by my hubris, aka 2 Spriggans, and fought some bandits to loot their— oh, come on! You can see my pause where I had to take a deep breath and prepare for the speech.
A new hand touches the beacon.
Anyway, I found a mammoth tusk, but I'm less excited about that now. But that was the last item I needed in order to craft the alchemy station, so I rushed back home to do that. I placed it on the dresser inside and tested it out. And that's every vanilla crafting station, and a couple thrown in just for fun. Silas finally had all he needed to be self-sufficient, and he could stop going into town and dealing with all those people. Some of them were nice, sure, like the lady who called him handsome at the inn, the general store owner who welcomed him despite being a stranger, the blacksmith who let him use the forge whenever he needed, and of course the Jarl who sold him this very land. But this wasn't about liking his neighbors. It was about protecting them. Silas went to bed that night wishing he could be in higher spirits, but in getting all he wanted, Silas finally realized the cost. Completion of his homestead meant complete isolation. He didn't sleep well. Back to normal, it seems. A beautiful sunrise should have been enough to lift his mood, but as he readied himself for his last trip to Falkreath, Silas felt only melancholy. He gathered his firewood, the last batch he would ever sell, and headed off. His pace slowed as he reached the rear gate, partly out of reluctance, and partly because he saw guards huddled together, blocking the entrance. As Silas approached, one guard stepped in his way. No one in or out of town. There's been a murder. Silas peered over the guard's shoulder to see blood painting the paving stones. Near the center of town, a mutilated corpse, chest torn open.
It was all true. Every detail of my nightmare written in blood on the roads of Falkreath. Were they all real? How many people have I killed? I can't let it keep going like this. I know what must be done. I won't allow another soul to suffer at my hand. Sinding will die, and then it's time for me to stop running.
Silas entered the cave, strewn with the bodies of failed hunters before him, ready to end it. He saw one of the hunters struggling with his last breaths, and knelt beside him. The Khajiit pleaded with Silas to end the hunt, to finish what they had started, before his eyes drifted closed, and his arms fell limp. Silas heard a shout from the cliff face above him.
The changes just came to me. I could never guess when. Like with the little girl. It wasn't anything I ever intended to do. I just lost control. I tried to tell them, but none of them believed me. That's why I wanted the ring. It was said to give men like me control. The beast wanders free. I still feel the animal inside of me as strong as ever. I don't want anything to do with this anymore. If you spare me, I can be a powerful ally to you. And I would promise to never return to civilized life. I know now that I can't live among people.
As a tear seemed to glimmer in the beast's eye, Silas felt compassion. In that moment, hearing the man within the monster recount his fight to control these transformations, Silas saw himself. He heard described his own skirmish, sleepless nights, nightmares come true, and dreading what he might do to those around him. Sinding ran, like Silas had run. Silas lowered his weapons. He agreed to fight off the hunters, damn Hirsing and his curse. Silas and Sinding would escape this plight together.
Should our paths cross again, I will remember your kindness. Farewell.
As Silas stepped out into the moonlight, an ethereal elk materialized before him, Hirsing, god of the hunt, appearing as a friend. The fickle deity praised him for his show. To defy a god, a truly stunning display of courage. Subverting the hunt as he did had earned Silas Hirsing's favor, and of course, Hirsing knew his greatest desire. A delicate silver ring carved with the face of a wolf appeared in his bag. Putting it on, Silas felt instant relief. A sense of calm, collection, a feeling of control.
21st of mid-year. It's been weeks since I donned this ring and not a single transformation. The nightmares are gone. I still feel the moon call to me at night, but I'm able to ignore it, to rest and dream peacefully. It might be foolish for me to think so, but I believe the ring isn't the only thing to thank. Building this place taught me many things. Patience, not the least of them. Perhaps I am simply a better man now than I was before, or perhaps I was not suited for city life to begin with. While I may never atone for the pain I've caused these people, I will never stop trying. The townsfolk are my neighbors after all, and Falkreath is my home.
Thank you for watching, and to all the new subs, welcome! I really wasn't expecting so much attention on the last video. The number of comments, likes, views, it's really blown me away. I'm so glad so many people enjoyed it. Reading all the kind comments really made my month, honestly. I loved making that video, and I'm really excited to see how people like this one. While I'm thanking people, thanks to my dad for voicing Silas. I think he did a great job. I hope you all agree. And again, thank you for everything. I hope you liked the video, and what hold should I do next? I have a bunch of ideas, and I can't wait to start the next one, so let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.